Hello, my amazing artist, and welcome back to Art While Apart with me, Miss H. This week, we are going to learn about the art movement known as pop art. So, what is pop art? Well, pop art was a major art movement of the 20th century, and it was an art movement in the late 1950s and 1960s that reflected everyday life and common objects. Pop artists blurred that line between what's fine art and this art known as commercial art. Okay, let's look at some more examples. So, pop art had a lot of famous artists that you've probably heard of come from this movement. Today we're going to focus on one of my personal favorite artists, Andy Warhol, and I hope that you'll be able to see how pop artists worked with ordinary, everyday objects as themes for painting, sculptures, collages, and printmaking. They were usually created with really bright, flat colors that really stood out. And the word pop art really just stands for popular art. So it's reflecting what was popular in culture at that time. So Andy Warhol was a central figure in the American pop art movement. After a successful career as a commercial artist, Warhol went on to become a famous worldwide for his work as a painter and filmmaker. Warhol created works of pop art by appropriating imagery from consumer culture. So he used this photographic silkscreen printing in his work from about 1962 to 1987. So for a long time of his career. Here's one example. So this is his very famous piece of art. This is done by a silkscreen printing, and it's a portrait of Marilyn Monroe, who was a famous actress. So he took her image, her photo, he appropriated it. That means he changed it, and he made it his own. And then as you can see, he used lots of bright, flat colors, and he played a lot with how to layer and print these colors on top of each other to create these different effects. So he appropriated, which just means borrowing images and giving them new meaning. He would look at magazines, newspapers, and even press photos, so things that you would see in maybe online today that we would see, or in a magazine. And he was really fascinated with celebrities, and so a lot of his artwork pictures different celebrities. And another cool thing is that pop artists took common everyday items and gave them importance as art. Pop artists really stretched the definitions of what art could be and how it can be made. So no longer is it just the modern art movement was going on. Instead, these artists wanted everyday things to become art. And it was just a different way of looking at things. So as you can see here, this is just the Campbell's tomato soup can. We all know this. We've probably seen it. Maybe it's in your pantry right now. Well, Andy Warhol took that common everyday object and he turned it into art. And again, he did use the silkscreen printing technique here. All right, so we're going to be inspired by this idea of taking everyday common objects and turning them into art. And so if you want to learn more about pop art and some of the other artists besides Andy Warhol, you can watch the video next to me on this slide. Or you can move on to the next slide and watch my tutorial on how to create our very own Andy Warhol inspired soup cans. So that's just a little introduction to what pop art is and a little bit about Andy Warhol. Again, I have a lot of information at the end of the slide deck if you're curious and want to learn more. I hope that you have fun, take chances, and stay curious.